Meeting will come to order, please. This is the New Smyrna Beach Animal Control Board meeting in Commission Chambers of Tuesday, November the 8th, 2022. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Bob Leonard,
Here.
Dana Hoffman,
Here.
Kelly Myers,
Here.
Bob Belt,
Here.
Brianna Mott has resigned. That concludes roll call.
Members, you had a chance to review the minutes of the May 3rd meeting. That I believe was a dangerous dog hearing involving the Garcia.
No, the May 3rd meeting was when we talked about the dog park.
Okay. Oh, okay. Any concerns about the minutes as they appear?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Mr. Belt made the motion. You have a second? You have to call the roll?
I did. Who seconded? Dana?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Bob Leonard,
Yes to approve?
Dana Hoffman,
Yes.
Kelly Myers,
Yes.
Bob Belt.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any old business?
Before we do that, let's go ahead and swear in those that are going to speak. For anyone that chooses to give testimony today, please stand and state your full name.
You speak up a little louder, please.
Okay. In the matter to which you are about to give testimony, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The witnesses have been sworn in.
Very good. So we have no old business while we're on
That is correct.
the, okay. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Rob Leonard, Chairman of the city's Animal Control Board. Today we're here in the matter of whether the dogs owned by Mr. Wilson, Yachty, and Harley should be considered as dangerous dogs pursuant to Chapter 767 of the Florida statutes. Mr. Wilson has stood and identified himself. And then Ms. Portia Benjamin is the bite victim in this case. She has stood and has been recognized. Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial administrative proceeding, and the hearing will go as follows. First, we will hear from the investigating officer, Officer Wilkes. We'll hear from the victim, and then we'll hear from the dog's owner. And after this testimony, anyone who has been sworn in and wishes to speak may address with comments based on and limited to testimony and evidence of record. All testimony is taken under oath, under penalty of perjury. All documents to be presented must be placed into evidence and appropriately documented by the city clerk. If you wish to speak, raise your hand to be recognized. Approach the microphone at the podium, state your name, residence, and then address the board directly. We will maintain courtroom decorum throughout these proceedings. And if there are any questions regarding the procedure we'll be following today, you may ask me now. First thing we want to establish is, what does dangerous dog mean? Florida statutes, as they apply in a case like the one before us today, defines dangerous as one that, according to the records of appropriate authority, has aggressively, without provocation, bitten, attacked, or endangered or inflicted severe injury on a human being on public or private property. Severe injury means physical injury that results in broken bones, multiple bites or disfiguring lacerations requiring sutures or reconstructive surgery. A dog shall not be declared dangerous if the threat injury, or damage was sustained by a person who at the time was unlawfully on the property or while lawfully on the property was tormenting, abusing, or assaulting the dog or its owner or family member. No dog may be declared dangerous if the dog was protecting or defending a human being within the immediate vicinity of the dog from an unjustified attack or assault. So in summary, today this board is charged with determining whether or not, first, the person involved was bitten, or that was bitten was lawfully on the property, that the attack was unprovoked, that the dog acted aggressively towards the person, that the person suffered severe injuries. Before hearing the testimony, I'll remind you that all testimony is taken under oath that has been administered by the clerk. We'll start today with the case summary that will be presented by Investigating Officer Megan Wilkes.
On October 7th, 2022, Portia Benjamin was delivering a package to the residents of 907 South Myrtle Avenue. While she was delivering the package, the dogs came around from the backyard, and in the front yard there's an electric fence. So they came out from the backyard around to the front yard and bit her in her arm while she was attempting to deliver the package. The bite resulted in her getting several sutures from the dogs. At the time, we were not able to identify the exact, if it was all three dogs. When I got there, she was already on her way to the hospital. When I spoke to her a couple days later, we found out that it was one of the two brown dogs listed in the initial determination.
Did I understand you to say that only one of the dogs were involved in the bite?
It was one of the, she got bit once by one of the brown dogs. Nobody saw it, and she wasn't able to determine which brown dog. She said both were jumping at her and both were biting her, but only one actually made contact and broke her skin.
Were they still on the property at this point?
Yeah,
So the dogs never went across the invisible barrier?
not to my knowledge, no.
Ms. McCurdy, I would just ask you a question for clarification here. In a case with a delivery person like this, I understand this was a FedEx delivery.
Correct,
This person is lawfully on the property making a delivery.
correct,
There's nothing wrong with that.
correct.
When we have a situation like this where we have multiple dogs
Okay.
and we're not sure which one may have actually bitten the person, how are we to determine which dog should be considered dangerous?
So I would point to the Florida statute 767.11, where it defines dangerous dog. It means any dog that, according to the records of the appropriate authority, which you are here to determine, has aggressively bitten, attacked, or endangered. So attack could be one, which doesn't include biting, so they're separate. So both dogs, based on the evidence you might hear today, attacked the individual. Has, when unprovoked, chased or approached a person upon the street, sidewalks, or any public grounds in a menacing fashion or apparent attitude to attack. So again, approaching them with the ability or menacing fashion to attack, so threatening. So you can determine, based on the evidence that will be presented here today, whether, while one bit, did the other one also come in a menacing, threatening, attacking fashion.
So it is not necessary for this board to determine which dog actually,
No, those
Bit-
two
bit
dogs
the
look
victim.
really similar. If you don't know
Correct.
them very well, you're not going to be able to just tell them apart by a glance.
Correct. You're going to determine whether they both are classified as dangerous. And because the statute is written as an or and not an and, it doesn't say bitten and attacked, it says bitten, attacked, or endangered. To me, it could be one of the three. And further down, it's like when unprovoked, it chased, it doesn't include biting, or approached a person in a threatening manner or menacing apparent ability to attack. So if there's evidence presented today that both dogs approached in a threatening manner and both had the ability to attack, while one did actually bite, I think under the statute, you would be able to make that determination.
Okay. Any other comments or questions of Officer Wilkes?
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more? The dogs from your report came from the back, but there was an electric fence in the front, is that correct?
Yes.
But there were no dogs behind the electric fence?
So the electric fence came out to the front area of the property.
Okay,
So while she was delivering, she was within or close enough to the electric fence to where they could access her without going past the fence.
oh.
Just for clarification, on an electric fence, is this an invisible fence?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a livestock type
No.
electrical?
Yeah, one the visible in the
electrified.
ground.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Okay, Ms. Benjamin, would you come forward to the microphone, please? Ms. Benjamin has been sworn in. You've heard the testimony thus far. Do you have anything to add to that or anything you would want the board to hear?
Just like Officer Wilkes said, I was there to deliver a package, the package that I had to deliver at the moment. It was required for a direct signature, which I couldn't release the package unless someone signed for it. So that was the purpose of me being there and ringing the doorbell, to try to get someone to come out. Unfortunately, no one was there at the time. And that's when the dogs came around from the back and, pretty much had me in the corner. To where I couldn't get anywhere. The one dog did get my arm. I ended up having to get 9 stitches put in. And that was pretty much how it went. And I was able to get away and run next door to the neighbor's house, which she was standing outside on her porch at the time.
Have you ever had an opportunity or an occasion to deliver packages to this address before?
No, this was my first time ever going there.
And just for the record, were there any signs, warning of?
No, I didn't see any signs
Dogs?
visible, no.
Okay. Board members, any
There were
questions
two
of Ms.
dogs,
Benjamin?
There were 2 dogs, one on each side,
Yes,
and you couldn't determine which one bit you.
no, I'm sorry.
But the other dog that didn't bite you was aggressive and trying to bite you?
Yeah, just when they came from around the back,
Mm-hmm.
came straight at me. I didn't have time to really do anything. He just jumped up and that's when he
both
grabbed
did?
my arm.
Both of
Mhm.
them?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And where was the third dog while all this was going on, the one that apparently is not included in today's proceedings?
Inside the house,
Oh, in the house?
yes.
Oh, okay. I think that one's in the clear.
That and the third dog is also white, so completely different description.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
So you'd referenced that they had cornered you. Were you on the porch at this time?
Yes.
Or
I was on the porch.
how were you able to get away without further?
I started screaming and the neighbor, I'm not sure, don't remember her name, her and the FEMA guy were standing on the porch when it happened. I started screaming and I was like trying to pick up the box. The box that I was delivering was actually a heavy box. So as I picked it up, I just started screaming and I like threw the box, and I think that's kind of like what startled them. And then I was able to get away, after I had gotten bitten. I ran into the neighbor's yard.
Okay. Did they pursue you at that time up until the invisible fence, or? Were you-
Just up until the invisible fence. I didn't know it was an invisible fence at the time. But like I said, I was able to get away and get into the neighbor's yard.
Is there any reference to any other delivery or there's been no other reports of this type of behavior in the past?
No, this is the first one.
And you don't know how they got out or got around, or I'm
No.
assuming the invisible fence is the only barrier for the animals?
Yeah, I'm assuming, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
May I ask you a question? When you were first there, where were the dogs?
I saw the one dog come in the window. I rung the doorbell once, and then that's when I heard the barking, and I saw the dog. But I was, at ease being that I saw the dog in the house. The second doorbell ring, that's when I saw the 2 dogs come from around the house. So and I was just standing there on the porch.
Any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Benjamin, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, please sign in. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, please come forward to the podium. Mr. Wilson has been sworn in. Is there any? That's my fault. I'm supposed to remind everybody to mute their phones, and I didn't do it. At this time, would everyone mute their phones? Okay. Okay, we've heard the testimony of the victim and the investigating officer. And Mr. Wilson, what do you have to add? What would you like for this board to know?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks for your time here today. I'm sure we all have better things to do than sit here and talk about this, prepare for a storm, and get out and vote today. I do have some things to add, please, that I'd like you to consider. First of all, we just moved over here in July. We had lived in Ocoee, the northwest side of Orlando, for the last 4 years with the dogs for most of that time. We had the same invisible fence over there, so they're trained to stop at an invisible fence. We have 5 kids that they run around with all the time. The kids bring their friends over all the time. Unbeknownst to the dogs, they don't know them. Never had any problems. Being a Navy vet, I kind of pride myself on trying to take care of people that need help all the time, so we are quite saddened and upset by what happened to Miss Benjamin when delivering the package. I'm not here to dispute anything that happened regarding it, but a couple things I'd like you to consider. We've had over 400 deliveries in the time frames we've had these dogs, and I have documented proof of that. Well, I say that. I'm assuming that I have Amazon documentation of over 325. I think it's reasonable to think we also had FedEx and UPS and the Postal Service deliver another 75 over the course of 5 years if we had 325 Amazon. Many times over those 400 deliveries, we would have the delivery driver come into our yard, leave a package, and leave with no problems, or the dogs would bark at them and they would leave. Other times, the dogs would come out of our old house because they figured out how to open the door because it had a lever on it, and they would run around, bark at them, but just sniff them and people would walk away. Or they would walk into the yard with the dogs there, put their hand out, they would sniff them and everything was fine. So approximately 400 times we had no issues. Unfortunately, we did this time. We did have an invisible fence there. They don't go past it. The one that we have in our house now is approximately 10 feet from the front door to the middle of the yard, so they can't get out of the middle of the yard. They can if they want to get shocked really bad. We do have a fence. Well, we had a fence. The backyard is fully fenced in, and the dogs were in the house at the time. I left to go take some stuff to the dump because we all had a little flood damage at the time. So I normally work from home. I'm there all day, every day, just about. If I'm not, I lock them in the back. But unfortunately, Hurricane Ian made a little Swiss cheese out of my fence. It took out the north-south side almost entirely, and the front gate is now bent to the point where the 2 panels are like this. Unbeknownst to me, the dogs were able to get through that fence at the time when Miss Benjamin was there. So they went from the house, from the kitchen, into the garage, out the back, into the yard, squeezed between the fence, and then back across the yard entirely to the other side where the front door is to get to her. So I would ask you to consider that they are normally locked in the back, or locked in the house, locked in by a fence that will be rebuilt shortly. Hurricane Ian pushing it open didn't help. Let's see. I do get text updates from FedEx, UPS, and Amazon. I was unaware that this one required a signature that day. Had I known that, I either A, would not have left, or B, would have had them hold it at their location to go pick it up because of the damage to the fence, which is what I almost always do. It's rare that we get a signature required. They walk up, they drop it off, they leave, but this was an expensive package, so I understand why that was necessary that day. The driver came into the front yard, rang the doorbell, which almost never happens. Nobody rings our doorbell, and our house was built in '62, and I think that doorbell was probably obsolete at the time it was built, because when you hit the button, it just buzzes. It creates, it literally buzzes out loud in the house, just a bzz. So that happening, I think, frightened them. So when we're talking about was there provocation, although unintentional, I think that's part of what scared them in this time versus the other 400 plus times that we've not had an issue. I would assume at that point, there was 3 total boxes. I would assume at that point she must, and I don't know this for sure, she probably went back to the truck, got the other 2 boxes to bring them up. Just makes sense to me that somebody would do that for efficiency. Got back to the door, I would assume, and then was waiting on me to answer, rang it a second time. By that time, they had gone from the kitchen, out the back, around through the gate, and back across the yard. It's approximately, if I had to guess, it's probably 100 yards. So, I do feel like, had there been a sign in the front yard stating that there was an invisible fence, which there is now, I've since remedied that situation. I've also put in a delivery box out front that's on the other side of the fence now. And I'm going to put one more sign in, apparently, because I've put instructions into UPS, FedEx, Amazon, and the Postal Service websites. I've delivered to the package, to the box out front. This is not directed at anybody here, but many drivers apparently don't read that because they still walk right through the south side of my yard, come walking in and drop off the box. And I'm like, guys, I'm doing my best here. I put a sign in that tells you not to do that now. So I'm going to put another sign on the south side of the yard as well as the one I have on the north side of the yard, to try and keep them just delivered to the box out front. If it's signature required, I'll go pick it up. I would ask you to consider that the statements, if you've read them, and the subsequent report, both state the dogs are pit bulls. And it says today that they're pit bulls. The dogs are not pit bulls. And I believe, I can't find it right now, but I believe Officer Wilk even wrote in the follow-up statement that they're Shepherd and Rhodesian Ridgeback. The word pit bull immediately brings everybody to their, I can't think of the word I'm looking for here, but it scares us. They're not pit bulls. They're Shepherd, and we have the adoption paperwork and the Rhodesian Ridgeback. I can't prove that, but I have pictures of them, and I think anybody who's ever seen a Rhodesian Ridgeback would be like, they're a Ridgeback for sure. So I don't think they're pit bulls. I understand when they're moving across the yard at, as fast as a dog can run, nobody's sitting there going, I wonder what kind of dog that is, right? I don't think that was the thought that day, and everybody just assumes. So I think the dogs got scared by the doorbell that day. We had a hurricane approximately 7-8 days before that. We took on flooding in our house. We're walking around in water for 2 or 3 days. We still have standing water 5-6 days later. There was some stress going on in their life. Suddenly somebody's ringing the doorbell lawfully. Totally, that's exactly what she was supposed to do, but they don't know that. And suddenly there's something else going on now, and they took off around and were protecting their home. With the sign out front there now, I think somebody would know if I just step back a few feet, they're done. There's kids that walk by all the time. They stand there and they bark. And honestly, if the kids walked over, I wouldn't be afraid for a kid to walk over because they bark like crazy, and they're babies generally. I don't know what was going on that day. So what I'm asking you to take into consideration is, were they provoked? According to the statute, it's without provocation. Again, lawfully, but that was what was different this time than the other 400 times. And also that there is a history without any problems and the circumstances regarding the storm taking out the fence. That's all I got, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Wilson?
So
How
you,
old are these dogs?
They'll be 5 in December, ma'am. We have their rabies records. They were up to date. We try to be responsible dog owners to everybody.
Yep, that was in the information that we were provided.
I figured, sir, but again, had that gate not been bent in half, I don't think we'd be standing here today.
With all the packages that you've had delivered, you were unaware that this one required a signature?
I did not know that, sir.
Would Amazon would not They do not give you that information, or
It
maybe
came-
it came on, you
It
didn't?
came from Bass Pro, sir, and I got a thing with a tracking number. I honestly don't know that I looked at it. It's some parts for my boat. I was pretty excited to get it, so I would have gladly, instead of not being home and being at the dump and missing it, so where they would have had to taken it back, I would have gladly had them hold it at a FedEx location and pick it up on my way back. Which I think going forward, probably be a smart move, because it's gonna take me a little bit to fix that gate fence, because the whole south side of the fence came down. But there's an invisible fence in the backyard too. So they can't get out of the back either without running through it and getting shocked.
So you had mentioned close to 400 deliveries total since you've had the animals. How many at this location would you guess you've had?
I'm gonna say maybe roughly 100, sir. That's an educated guess, because we were running approximately 60 a year according to the records on Amazon that I printed out. I think that's a little high this year because we bought the home over here, and at one time we had 2 homes, so I was trying to buy stuff off Amazon and furnish 2 places, whereas normally we just had our normal. When you got 5 kids, it seems like somebody's finding something on Amazon constantly, so
Yeah, I can imagine. And you've had the dogs for how long?
it'd be February will be 5 years. They were born in December, but we didn't get them until they were 8 weeks or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, please sign.
So just show of hands, anyone else that wanted to testify, we'll start from the front, work our way back. You would please come up and again, give us your name, your address.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Smith. I'm at 903 South Myrtle. I am Mr. and Mrs. Wilson's neighbor, directly, side by side. I was on my front porch that day meeting with the FEMA representative when the FedEx truck passed before my house and stopped the neighbors. And she fiddled in the truck for a few minutes, I assume, getting the packages and so forth together. She got out of the truck holding more than 1 package. I don't know exactly how many. And she walked into the yard, and I'm really paying attention to the FEMA gentleman because we're having a conversation about my home that was just flooded. But I did notice her enough to think in my head, wow, she's walking in the yard. I kept on having my conversation with the FEMA gentleman, and I heard commotion and looked up, and instantly, as I heard her, the delivery lady screaming, and but I had looked up before she started screaming because I heard the dog commotion. And when I saw her come, there's just a tiny bit of a fence that's left that I couldn't see her to be on the front porch, like the front porch would be right here. I could probably see her as far as that counter this way. She came running this direction, screaming, with both of her arms extended in the air, high-stepping very largely, screaming, trying to get away from the dogs. She had 1 dog on each arm. And they were, as her paw, their paws were above her shoulders. They were up here high. I mean, like, I think if you put her elbow up high, that's how high they were. So they're big dogs. The FEMA gentleman actually froze. He did see the situation because he heard her scream, so he turned his head. But I instantly got up and started running towards the opening of my fence, hollering for her to come over here, get away from the dogs. And she's screaming and she's running. And there's a fence, a chain link fence that comes this way and then this way, about 7 feet, maybe 10 feet, but I don't even think it's 10, probably 7. So she runs out of their yard into the street without looking, which is dangerous, but she has dogs. And she comes running into my yard, and I kind of greeted her there, and I instantly, she had her hand on her arm like this, and I'm like, hold tight to your arm, we'll look at it in a minute. Right now, you need to just stop and breathe, calm down, and and she's like, started calling 911 to get the ambulance and the police department, et cetera, out there. The 911 operator asked to speak directly to her, so I put the phone on speaker and allowed her to do her conversation with them. In the meantime, I kind of released her arm, her hand just a little bit to take a look, and I could see the bites, I could see the blood, and I could see dark flesh, and I could see white flesh. Let's see here, so that's when we were in the yard. Okay. So then I brought her back to the porch with the purposes of being able to set her down and maybe put an ice pack while we were waiting on the ambulance to arrive. I remember coming onto the porch with her. By that time, my neighbors on the other side, which would be, says 905, 903, that's 7, it's probably like 900, I don't know exactly, but the opposite side of Wilson's, the missus came over, and she said, what's going on? How can I help? And I'm like, go inside, get her some ice, and get her a paper towel or napkin, whatever, to hold her arm until the ambulance gets here. Then her husband, the neighbor's husband, then came over with their son, and had hung up from 911 at this point. I was like, I don't know how to get hold of the neighbors. They're not home, and I don't know. I have the gentleman's, Mr. Wilson's phone number, but I can't find it. I don't know where it's at because my house is chaotic at the moment, and I had written it down or gave me a business card. And I believe it was Mr. Stinson that actually called and notified Mr. Wilson of the situation and that he needed to come home immediately. So the ambulance had taken her, and then there was a bunch of other, I'm going to say, professional communication because supervisors started showing up. Other neighbors were there. I did not realize this at the time, but the FEMA person, the gentleman was there. He was in a bit of shock. He had been attacked as a child by a dog, and he didn't explain this to me until later. So I had to kind of get him to start breathing again as well, relax and calm down. That's pretty much the gist, I think, of what you all need to know, but for the actual situation. There were some things there that Mr. Wilson said that I think I would like to add some points to. Mr. Wilson and I, like I said, we are direct neighbors, and prior to the flood, he and I had had a conversation on at least 2 occasions, one casual in passing, one that may have lasted 10 minutes, about the fence. His fence is a wooden fence, and I have a chain link fence. His wooden fence is leaning, and my chain link is broken. And his wooden fence is leaning on several parts of my chain link, and I went over to explain to him that I was going to take my chain link down for appearance's sake, but I can't because his fence is leaning on my fence. I heard through the grapevine that he was going to be replacing his fence and asked how soon that was going to be done. He explained it is in the to be done column, but he could not tell me how soon. So the fence in the backyard is in a bit of disrepair, and it was even before the flood. So that I think is important to know as well. I also know that I have been invited over to meet Mrs. Wilson on multiple occasions when Mr. Wilson, because I also work from home. So Mr. Wilson and I would pass in the yard going to get mail or something, and he would be, come on over and meet the wife. And I'm like, 3 separate times I have gone over there to meet the wife, and I can't get past the front. I can't pass the grass line because the dogs meet you at the yard, and they bark and they growl, and I'm not going to subject myself to that. So you needed to know that as well.
Ms. Smith, your earlier part of your testimony, you expressed some surprise that the FedEx delivery person was just walking onto the property.
Oh, yes.
Why is that? Is it because of what you just said about how the dogs react to you?
Because of my own concerns, but I neglected to tell you a piece, thank you. While waiting for the ambulance, because I believe he actually spoke to the victim, the UPS driver stopped and said, "Did those dogs finally bite someone?" And I was like, and he spoke to the victim and coached her to make sure she recorded everything and get names.
Let me stop you right there. Was that information in evidence in the report that the UPS man?
I never spoke to a UPS man.
Okay, so.
I believe it's in my written part of my statement that the UPS man gave information, but I will omit that. Okay, that we won't talk about it.
I mean, it's hearsay,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
I don't know that you observe strict evidential rules on these proceedings, but technically it's hearsay,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. All right. But yes, I was surprised by my own reaction of the dogs.
Were you inclined to warn her when you saw her coming onto the property?
She was walking quickly, and I can't say that I thought to warn her because when I saw her, she was already well past the invisible fence. And like I said, Mr. Wilson wasn't home. I assumed that the dogs would have been locked up, but I did not know that.
Any other questions of Ms. Smith?
Just from multiple deliveries that have, obviously, he stated close to 100 since he's been there.
Okay?
Have you witnessed any of those deliveries prior to this one?
Yes.
Have you seen was that same interaction, or were the dogs always secure and not able to?
I have seen the dogs outside when I was under the impression that no one was at the home, in the front yard. And I know that many of the deliveries, I have seen at least 5 deliveries, because I am more often than not inside. I have seen at least 5 deliveries where they are left at the post box versus on the porch.
Okay,
But I don't know why that was done. I just know that that was done.
okay.
Any more questions of Ms. Smith? Okay, Ms. Smith, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. You please come forward and give us your name and address, please?
Hi, my name is Pamela Bell, and I live at 919 South Myrtle Avenue. I am directly adjacent on the south side of Mr. Wilson. As Mr. Wilson stated, they moved in approximately 11 months ago. He brought his dogs just a few months after he moved in. The fence has been in disarray for a while. I don't even know if you remember the hailstorm we had, but I believe that was in April. In April, 2 fence panels fell down. Once he arrived with his dogs, we determined we were definitely going to need a fence between his dogs and my family. So at that point, my husband gave him a partial chain link fence to put there. So they did put that up to try and keep his dogs from coming over. Shortly after that, he installed the invisible fence. The invisible fence runs on all sides. It's like a rectangle. And the dogs are allowed to come out into the driveway. The dogs not only go out the side gate, which leads to the front yard, they have a garage door which opens, and there's a side door on that garage. If that garage door is open, those dogs can come around from the backyard through the garage and bark at everyone walking past. As you know, South Myrtle high school, middle school is right down the road. There are a lot of children who walk past, and it has scared me from the day they've moved in. I cannot check my mailbox. I cannot go to the mailbox. My husband does that for me. Sorry, Sean, but this is a safety matter, and I can't live like this. It's getting pretty ridiculous. Then it got to the point where they finally bit someone. When my husband goes to the mailbox, or when I try and go to the mailbox, The dogs are in the front yard, and there's approximately 15 feet between the invisible fence ending in our mailbox. It is very, very scary to hear these dogs growling and pawing at the ground to get to us. It's a constant problem. I have a half acre. I can't go out in my backyard without these dogs barking, and I call it matrix fighting. So there are two dogs, they look identical. One has a blue collar, one has a red collar. The red collar is a little more aggressive than the blue collar. They jump up in the air and they fight each other, and it sounds like someone is being eaten. I don't understand it, I don't know why they do it, but it's like in the air, and then they just constantly do that. I don't know if it's playing, fighting, but it's scary to wake up to at 6 a.m. in the morning. Something needs to be done. A physical fence needs to be put up. I understand he has the invisible fence. I had an invisible fence. I had a yellow lab. We have a ditch behind us. My yellow lab was constantly in the ditch. He ran through it without a yelp, no care in the world. So we knew that in time this was gonna happen, and it's terrifying. We're afraid. My daughter calls me when she gets in the driveway so we can go to the front door just to escort her from her car into the house. Like I said, I can't check my own mailbox. He did mention that the fence is in disarray. Yes, it has been. It has been for quite some time. And they purchased the house, like I said, approximately 11 months ago. So he's had plenty of time to get up a fence. So I am here today to tell you my concerns that I do believe, I agree with Officer Wilk, that these two dogs, there are three. There is another dog whom they said was inside, and he was. That dog didn't bite, and he's really not that scary. He's kind of old, he's like a Labrador, and he just barks. I do think he's the matriarch of the three. I think that one starts barking. The other two get a little rowdy when he starts barking, like they're trying to protect him. But I can't even go outside. I should be able to use my back property. We actually put up 6 pieces of fence about 40 feet into my property. So I've lost about 40 feet of my property just to put up a temporary fence between my house and a little log cabin portion, just to keep them from coming over. If they happen to get through the invisible fence, they've got to get through a privacy fence. But it's really not fair to me to have lost that property because of fear of getting near these dogs. It's terrifying.
Questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, did you say you had children?
I do. I have a 16-year-old at home. I have 2 others that aren't at home. I do have grandchildren, but it's just my 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Have you in the past notified animal control about your concerns?
We have not, and the reason why is because we wanted to be nice neighbors. Like I said, I've been in my house for 30 years, born and raised here in New Smyrna, and they've just moved in. I'm not trying to be the mean neighbor. I really just want to live peacefully. I don't want to start trouble. But until they actually bit someone, I'm not an expert. I don't know how to deem a dog dangerous or not dangerous. All I can tell you is my feelings, and I'm scared. I'm scared to go outside, and I'm scared to check my mailbox. But that's the reason we haven't called. I didn't want to be, for lack of better words, the jerk neighbor, that called because of the dogs. But once the dogs bit, we knew we needed to do something about it. The neighbor on the other side, they're avid runners and walkers. They don't walk past our house anymore. It's not good. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Was there any other public participation?
That's your decision.
With time limit?
Yeah, no time limit.
Okay. Yes, sir, please come back up.
Thank you. Just a couple things regarding what we just talked about, and I'm not disagreeing that my dogs sound ferocious. They're siblings. They're brother and sister. All they've done since they were puppies is fight each other. They've never been aggressive to anybody else other than they do sound ferocious. They will stand there and they will bark at you as you go by. What I'd ask you to consider is, I don't think anybody in this room today can tell me they've ever left the invisible fence area. Yes, the fence has gone down, and our home is pretty old and needs a lot of repairs, whether it's inside or outside. It became more pressing outside with the storm that took out the entire fence. But the backyard fence, I don't even know why we're discussing it, to be frank. The only problem with the backyard fence is that they got through the gate that got damaged in the storm to get to the front yard. Right? I mean, they haven't gone out of my backyard. They stand there and bark at you. I don't know that that's against the law or makes it, and I understand that it might be fearful. This is the first I'm hearing of that, and they can't get out there. To say that the old invisible fence, could a dog go past it? Absolutely. We had that over in Ocoee for a while, and there was a different kind of collar that as soon as they crossed over said fence, it stopped shocking them. They went on about their merry way. So all they needed was a split second. The new invisible fence now will shock them up to 30 yards past the fence until they return. It's a different style. It's a new version. I do intend to fix the rear fence as soon as I get some of the flooding damage and the possibility of mold growing in my house done. But they've never left that fenced-in area. The real problem is there was provocation that day that doesn't normally happen. I'm normally home anyway. And the fact that they're in the yard barking, it's what dogs do. I don't know what else they're supposed to do. And regarding Ms. Benjamin having to get past the fence to the neighbors, I would ask where the dogs were, because she stated that the other neighbor walked over with his son. Where were the dogs? Were they standing in the yard barking behind the fence on my property? Why didn't they run out and attack? So by the time she screamed, yelled, dropped the boxes, and took off, but they never left a 10-foot area from in front of my door. The fact that she had to run up and around the fence, she didn't have to run, she didn't know this, I'm not saying she did, but the dogs stopped when they got to the fence line. She continued to run because she didn't know that, I understand that, but it didn't take another physical barrier fence to stop that. And the fact that both dogs came from the south side. They both came out of the gate together. There was no other way out at the time. Yes, I leave my garage door open sometimes when I'm home. But at that time, it was closed, and they both came out of the gate on the south side. So for them to get on either side of her, that's a 35-yard maneuver. So I feel like by putting in a notice that there's an invisible fence there now, somebody could back up behind it by the time the dog could get that far going forward. And I have photographic evidence that I've already put that in. I don't know how to get that to you, but it's on my phone, so that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to review the statutory definition of a dangerous dog. And it's a little, we tend to want to use Webster's definition of dangerous when we're talking about animals. And this is something that's designated by Florida statute. And we've gone over it once. I want to repeat it again. We do have a new member on the board. Just to understand what it is we are to take into consideration. The person that was bitten, were they lawfully on the property? That's been established. That the attack was unprovoked. It has been mentioned several times that a doorbell may have provoked the dogs. I don't think it's reasonable that a doorbell could be considered provocation for an attack on an individual, because provocation really implies making a move or an aggressive move towards the animal or doing anything to directly incite the animal to exhibit aggressive behavior. So I don't think a doorbell could constitute a provocation when it's looked at like that. The third thing is, did the dog or dogs act aggressively towards the person? And did the person suffer severe injuries? Looking at these four criterion in this case, and it appears to me that the dangerous dog definition has been satisfied with this criterion. Our concern here is this is a citizen board. We're all volunteers. The people on this board that I know personally have a very good background and have had many animals, have lived in this community for a long time. It is our effort to do what we can to protect and serve the citizens of this community. And in the cases where we have neighbors that have seen animals, though they haven't filed a report yet, but this is their forum, this is their opportunity to express their concerns. We had to wait for something bad to happen, is what it amounts to. And now that it's happened, we have to consider the evidence before us. Board members, do you have any other comments before we entertain a motion?
I would just ask if you could redefine the steps after, what happens if a dog is deemed dangerous? What's
So when a dog is deemed dangerous, in this particular case, we're not going to recommend euthanasia
Could you
or anything
pull,
like that.
pull your microphone a
Oh,
little
yeah,
closer to
sorry.
you? The rain's drowning you out.
This better? Okay. In this case, we're not going to recommend euthanasia or anything like that. What will happen for this case is both dogs will have to be registered with the city every year. It's a $250 fee for each dog. They will have to have signage around their house saying that there's a dangerous dog on their residence. If the dog is kept outside, it has to have a full enclosure. It has to have some sort of top on it. They can't just have full run of the backyard without the owner being out there with them at the time. And if they leave the property for anything, they have to be muzzled while off property. And this is all what Florida statute says as guidelines.
Okay, thank you. So certainly the first and the most important thing is fortifying the enclosure, you know, having a fence repaired and having it secured. That is one of the things you have to do, right?
Yes, but even then, he'd have to be outside with the dogs. The dogs just couldn't have full run of the fence without supervision.
Yeah, so, you know, this is another case where perhaps a secured fence 2 months ago and we wouldn't be here today, sort of amounts to. Okay,
And the electric fence out front, they couldn't be out there because there's no physical
Right.
barrier. The statute would say they have to have a physical barrier. And then also it goes on, if the dog bites again, depending on the severity of the bite, it could be a misdemeanor or felony on the owner, depending on severity.
okay, at this time, we entertain a motion that we find the two dogs, Yachty and Harley, to either be dangerous or not dangerous. Do we have a motion?
Can I ask that
Yes.
when you make the motion, if you are going to make the motion to find them dangerous, to include within that motion that they be deemed dangerous under the statute and comply with the statute? Since there's two options here, and the recommendation from the animal control officer is not euthanasia, it's still within the board's purview to make that determination. I understand that's not where this is going, but just so the motion is clear.
Okay, so the motion would be then to include that the dog is dangerous within the meanings of Florida statute, chapter 767.
Correct, and to abide by the statutes, maintaining of a dangerous dog, what's outlined in there, how to maintain a dangerous dog.
Okay,
So I think you could just say to comply with the statute that regarding maintaining a dangerous dog in city code.
okay. Officer Wilkes, did you have something to add? Okay. I would then make the motion that the dogs Yachty and Harley be considered in accordance with Florida Chapter 767 to be dangerous, and owners are to be brought into compliance with the requirements of having a dangerous dog. Any verbiage I need to add to that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, very good. So I have that in the form of a motion. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Hoffman, second.
The vote,
Ms. Langdon, would you call the roll, please?
Bob Leonard,
Yes.
Dana Hoffman,
Yes.
Kelly Myers,
Yes.
Bob Belt.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, Officer Wilkes will be a big help to you in helping you bring your property and your enclosures into compliance and answer your questions. There is an appeals process that's available to you, and the city attorney office will be who you would need to check with to get information on that should you decide to go that route. Again, this is a citizen board, and we take this responsibility very seriously, and there's never any winners in these. I leave here when we have a case like this, knowing they're good people, they're their dogs, their family pets, and something unfortunate happened. We hate that it happens. Our responsibility is to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And if you abide by the instructions that Officer Wilkes will share with you, I think you can go on and enjoy your dogs and get along better with your neighbors. I think it'll, everybody's going to be better off. And I hope things work out. Okay. I want to thank those of you that testified and participated. This is an important part of the process, and your input's very much appreciated. You took time to come in here, and I thank you for that. Okay. Ms. Benjamin, I hope you heal up well. Okay.
The only thing left on the agenda is you'll find the last page is the calendar for next year. As long as that's satisfactory to everyone, we will leave it as is. And those will be our regular scheduled hearings if we have something to bring to you.
Mr. Belt, the time of the meetings is no longer an issue with you, as I understand it? All right, very good. Is there any more business to come before the board? Do we need to approve that calendar?
Not formally.
Okay, all right. Any other concerns or comments from board members at this point? Any other public participation or comments? Being no more business to come before the board, we stand adjourned. Okay, thank you.